Hi, everybody. It's Martha Novak. Glad to talk with you today. I used to be in radio years ago, and I would always marvel at how the DJs at the time would just barely make it into their chair, for the broadcast. I find myself doing the same thing these days. Hang on a sec. I had to get Kleenex because there is something blooming again up here that makes my nose run. And that's a hell of a way to start a show, isn't it? Anyway, I'm so glad to talk with you today. We are going to be talking about anxiety. Now, this is really a little different way of talking about anxiety. I've done shows on anxiety before. I think it's a really important topic. So, what I want to do today is really talk about let me do that. The different manifestations of it, how to deal with it. And I want to go beyond the common things that we say to manage it. All right. Because my job is very different from other people's jobs. My job is consciousness. It's talking about consciousness and enlightenment and how everything fits into the whole of a dynamic life, even anxiety. There's a specific way to work with it, and we're going to talk about that today. I see I already have a call in. Our guest call in number is 347-850-1647. That's 347-850-1647. I'm going to do a quick prayer, my 973 exchange, and I am delighted to talk with you today live on the air. So I'll be getting to you in just a moment after our prayer and before we launch into our talk on anxiety. So you guys, we're so glad that you're with us today. Again, I'm really interested in talking about things that are a little different. Certainly prayer, meditation, and all of this helps. It doesn't fix anxiety. So we're going to talk about what might, all right? And I think it will if you'll give it a shot. So here we go with a quick prayer, and then we'll go to our phone call. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are, and all everything is in this world. And I'm very sorry, ladies and gentlemen, about the dog barking. I do want you to know that it's a wonderful test to keep us focused and in our own being. So hopefully he'll stop in a little while, but there are squirrels on the porch. So, dear God, we thank you so much for the blessings that we are receiving right now, that we are open to receiving, and we ask that you help us be even more open to receiving them than we think we are, that we may shift and change and grow and be on the path of cooperation with our highest selves. We now open ourselves to see, hear, sense, and know what you would have us do as we open to the truth that lies in your enlightenment. We thank you so much, dear God, for all of this and for uniting us under the banner of loving you and being in cooperation with you. We thank you so much. We are here to live the aspect of the you we are and bring light and love to the world in whatever way we can through our talents and gifts and abilities. We now surrender knowing anything, for it's the you through us that knows it all. And we are in full cooperation with this. And so it is. Amen. Thank you so much. And it's hello to you too, dear. I'm glad that you're listening today. All right, let's go to our caller, and then we will launch into our information. Hi there. I'm talking to a 973 exchange. Can you tell me to whom I'm speaking? Hello?
Yes, happy Sunday. My name is Tina.
Oh, hello, Tina. How are you? Happy Sunday to you, too.
Yes, happy Sunday.
Tina, what can I do for you today? I'm Martha Novak.
I'm fine, and you? Thank you for having your show today.
Thank you. I'm glad that you're listening. So what can I help you with today?
I just wanted to ask about a relationship.
Yeah? Yes, ma'am. Are you still there?
Yeah, I was about a relationship and my business.
You want to ask about a relationship and your business. Is that right?
Okay.
Okay. These things are not related, are they?
Yeah.
They are. Okay. They felt yeah. Okay.
No.
Um all right. Let's talk about the relationship first. You're this person's very controlling. Do you know that?
Thank you.
Huh? Tina?
Yes.
Okay, I need you to
Yes.
keep talking to me, but darling, because what happens with
Yes,
this,
I do.
yeah, with
Yes.
this phone, sometimes I don't know whether somebody's still on it or not, because it goes down from time to time, and I don't want to lose you. So when I ask a question, please jump in there, okay? But this person feels very controlling.
Oh, okay.
Are you aware of the control that he or she is
Yeah,
exerting?
he is very controlling.
Okay. That's going to be a problem. You may not feel like it's a problem right now.
Yeah, he's controlling.
Okay. It may not feel like
really?
it may not feel like it's a problem right now, but it will eventually be a problem. That's the big thing that I feel from this person. Okay?
Oh, really?
Yeah. I like it. I mean, I like most everybody, my husband says, but there is a anxiety driven control by him. He likes to be dominant. And as you know, a great partnership is when both parties contribute.
What kind of control you say?
I just said there is an egoic control that is driven by anxiety. You don't see that because all you're seeing is the control. But it doesn't
get by anxiety.
Yes, it is not going to, Tina, get better through the years. So I want you just simply, hello, Patrick. I simply want you to know what you're buying in relationship with him, and I want your eyes to be open right now. It's always fun to be in love. It's always fun to have the beginning of a relationship, but it's very important for you to have your eyes open. Okay? You hear me?
Yeah, well, why is he controlling like that?
Darling, there are all sorts of reasons we control.
Why is he like that?
Darling, his past has told him that's the way he gets things. And you're not going to change that. So if you think it's going to get better, or he won't be like that ultimately, or he'll see good sense, that is not going to happen. He's going to be like that. That's what you're buying when you're in relationship with him. Okay? Now, concerning your job.
I mean, is he bossy, or are you go with you?
Darling, it's far more than bossy. He likes to be in control. He likes to have it all done his way.
And will it go into
what? Tina?
But I'm saying, will it go into abusiveness, or is he just bossy?
No, I don't think it's going to go into abusiveness, but it depends on how you define abusiveness, because it will go into the fact that he'll say you're stupid because you don't do it his way. I think that's pretty abusive myself. Is he going to hit you? No, I don't think so.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He hasn't shown me.
I know. Nobody shows it in the beginning. Be careful. I'm just saying, open your eyes. Watch it over a period of time. That's all I'm saying. Okay? You know, I know a lot of people that do very well in relationships like this. All right? And here is what I mean. you do very well in relationships when you have a real strong sense of self and you say, whoop, toe is over the line right here. Get back over the line. I get to do it my way. You get to do it your way. It doesn't mean anything except we have different ways of doing it. You have to be a pretty strong person to do that. Now, this man is not aware, and he's going to say that you are wrong for doing things your way. And there is no right and wrong here. They're just different ways of doing it. But he's not going to see that ultimately. Okay? That's all I want to put on the table. So let's go to your business. How's that?
Oh, okay.
It is in great flux right now. You are changing careers. Is that right? Are you changing careers, Tina?
Okay, you sound thinking clear.
Tina?
Yes, I am.
You're changing careers. That's right?
Yes, I am. It's a nonprofit organization. Yes.
So you are going to a nonprofit organization? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I actually think that will be certainly, they're a bit disorganized. I will tell you, that's the only thing I see there. They seem to not be able to get their act together. What's that about? Is it a new group? Tina?
I'm sorry, is it what you said?
Is it a new group? They seem a bit disorganized. Yeah. Okay, so this is a new organization. I know it's new for you. I'm talking about, is this a new organization, or has it been going for a while? Because they seem disorganized when I tune into them. Tina?
Yeah, it's my organization. I started it.
Oh, you started it. Okay. Well, sweetheart, I just think
yes, it's my organization. I started it.
There is a disorganized quality. There is something disorganized about this. It's not organized like it needs to be yet. And the success is going to come out of a more specific organization and a more specific focus. It's unfocused. And so you may need to go to a coach, a business person who can pull this together for you. All right? Because right now it is unfocused. You don't have it as focused as it needs to be.
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any other questions, dear heart?
Yes.
Do you have any other questions?
Well, okay, just to a coach. There's a coach named Jessica, and there's Tamika. Do you know which coach? Yeah, for my business, the coach is Tamika or Jessica. Do you know which one would be better for me to work with?
I don't think
my organization.
I don't think either one of them are good. They're not. Pardon me for saying so, but they're not kick-ass enough. They're too much like you, and you need someone who is very, very solid in a business sense.
Oh.
And they are not. They are too much like you. Now, it's wonderful for you to have such a good heart and for you to have such a creative aspect. It does you absolutely no good if you don't have the organizational part of this, and nobody you're mentioning does. So I need you to go to someone that you might not be drawn to, that is a very, very good business person who will force you to think and to create something that you don't like particularly to do, which are the details of this, the focus of this. They're going to ask you some very, very hard questions that you don't have an answer to yet. Yeah. Okay? And that's the kind of person I need to have you go to. You understand? Tina?
Okay, one more question. What about working at this place called Exchange? Will it be good to work there part-time? Yeah, will it be good to work at this place called Exchange part-time?
Yeah, I'll just bring you some extra money. It's fine. No problem. It's just a little extra money for you. And
Okay, but it's good working there with. Okay, and working.
there's nothing good or bad about it. It's just a place to go make
Okay,
money.
I have a friend that works there. It's okay to work with her?
Sure. Sure.
Okay, yeah, I like it. So, and it's okay to work with my friend. I'm her name. Okay.
Yes, absolutely. I'm
Okay,
just
thank you.
talking about concerning your business, darling. You need somebody
Okay.
that you are never drawn to. You are not drawn to these hard-nosed business types. That's what you need in terms of a coach for you, because you are unfocused, and this needs to focus for you to be successful. Okay? Tina?
Yes, I understand that.
All right, darling.
Thank you. Okay, so my boyfriend, if you're saying don't continue a relationship, yeah, with my boyfriend, if you're saying that the relationship he's bossy, is it okay to be his friend?
Well, it's okay to have a relationship with him. I'm not saying do or don't. I'm not
Okay to have a
saying,
friendship with him?
yeah, I'm not saying do or don't. I'm saying it's fine. Just have your eyes open and realize he's this way. That's all. You know, my husband's a bit OCD. He's adorable, but you know, when we are doing things together, we say, you know, I keep reminding him, hey, we do things differently. It's perfectly all right, you know. So it doesn't I'm never saying break up, don't break up. I'm saying keep your eyes open, and here is what you look for. That's all I'm saying here. Okay? What you do with that relationship, darling, is always going to be your choice and his choice, you see? But don't go in blindly. That's all.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you so
I
much.
understand that. Thank you.
All right, darling. Much success. Take care. Bye bye.
Yes, I understand that.
Wonderful. Let us know
Thank
how
you.
you are,
Have a good day.
Tina.
Bye-bye.
You too. Bye bye. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you all have anything to talk with me about, the guest call-in number is 347-850-1647. Hello, Kat. I'm so glad that you all are with us this morning. Today, we're talking about anxiety. And of course, callers can take us in any direction. It's just fine with me. I always enjoy my callers very much. But let's talk about anxiety, because I think that this is really important. And some of these things I have not said in other shows where I've addressed anxiety. And I also want to tell you, because what I do is different. I teach consciousness. I teach deeper levels of that, and the furthest reaches enlightenment, if we're all lucky enough to get there. What I want to say about this is that we have to look at our subjects on a much deeper level than some of the modalities that are very valid but get slapped on the top of these things. For example, meditation is a marvelous exercise. I love it. I do it every day in my way. However, what I want you to know is that it is the motivation that you have underneath the motivation why you're doing meditation that's the key to whether you stay anxious or not. For example, if you are meditating to try to find some peace within so you don't feel anxious, you're trying to run away from the very thing that Spirit is actually calling you to look at. That is not going to work for your overall life. Well, hello, Michelle in Canada. I'm so glad that you're listening today. So we can't use these marvelous modalities like meditation as a band-aid to slap over a cut. We've got to find out why we continue to cut ourselves. Does that make sense? And that requires us looking at why we're anxious, how our anxiety comes up, what words we're calling it instead of anxiety, any real patterns we're doing out of that, and break them. It's far more complicated than what we're trying to do to relieve ourselves. The very fact that we're trying to relieve ourselves shows that we want to escape from it instead of explore it, which is going to ultimately free us from it. You see? That's interesting. However, you can't explore it ad nauseum. You can't stay there too long either. Everything is about using the word, the emotion. Hello, Stephanie. Everything is about using it, what do I want to say, wholesomely for the good of the whole. Yes, good. It is life-changing to meditate. Stephanie was just sharing that she meditates daily. She sounds like, when she says it's life-changing, that she's using it in a good way. There was a man that I met a number of years ago, and he had a real messed up life still, and he was an ace meditator. Now, this is just by way of example. You probably are using it while you're listening to a show on consciousness. I don't much think people listen to shows on consciousness if they are not wanting to investigate things, right? Okay. This particular man was doing some work that certainly pulled him down. He struggled. He had been a heroin addict at one time, kicked that, but he was using meditation as his heroin. Um, and so when I asked him to do anything about that, like have a walking meditation, like one of my favorite, when I say I'm meditating in my way, I certainly sometimes meditate in the traditional way. I love brainwave technologies, for example, and that's a traditional, more modern, but traditional way. I also believe in a walking meditation. In other words, we should be able to walk around in life in those lower brainwave states meditatively and interact. You see? Right now I'm interacting with you all, but I am meditating. I'm in the meditative state to interact. That's the only reason that when Tina calls in, I can pick up on the man, I can pick up on the job, you see? Because all that information is available in those lower brainwave states. Okay, now, when we're talking about anxiety, let's really talk about anxiety because it's different from fear. Um, And there's just a lot to learn about this. So here we go. Ready? Let's launch in together. First of all, let's define it. It's an emotion characterized by a lot of inner conflict, right? It results in a lot of manifestations like pacing back and forth and trouble sleeping and aches and pains you don't normally have, or a heightened sense of those you do have. An excessive rumination. Let's talk about rumination because that's an important part of this. A rumination is a person's obsessive focus on a source of stress or sources of stress, rather than concentrating on finding a solution or being able to shift their mental focus to something else that's more wholesome. Okay. It also, anxiety also causes problems concentrating, and I've had people not be able to track what I'm saying because what I'm saying, and this might happen to you on this radio show because I certainly try to hit it hard, but you may just go blank. I haven't heard a word you said in class yesterday, and oddly enough, I was doing a lecture on anxiety during a course on that. One of my darling students said, I haven't heard a word you said. Would you mind repeating that? I just blanked out. And that's a common thing that we do out of our anxiety. Now, keep in mind, there's an anxiety you're aware of, and there's a cellular anxiety you're not aware of. I'm pretty aware of what's going on in my conscious mind. I certainly don't mind admitting when I have anxiety that I'm aware of. But I've noticed that there's a whole cellular anxiety sometimes that comes up, and I have to sit down and go, wait a minute, I all of a sudden I'm not sleeping or I'm restless or I don't know what to do with myself. There's an anxiety. What's going on here? And it'll be something that I didn't know bothers me. So I put that on the table for you. Anxiety is not the same thing as fear. And to confront anxiety and deal with it effectively, I think we very much have to call it what it is. So I want to talk about the differences. Fear is a response to a real or perceived immediate threat. But anxiety involves the expectation of some future threat. Now, the operative word in that last sentence is the word some future threat, because oftentimes the anxiety is generalized and unfocused. This is what makes it so insidious. It is generalized and unfocused. As a matter of fact, it can not even be yours. You can just have inherited it. I have a client who doesn't remember much of her childhood. She had a mother who was enormously fearful. Her mother was enormously fearful. Her mother had a very abusive father. Okay. And so her mother was afraid of everything. And so this woman, and anxious about everything, this woman now has kind of inherited all that from her mother. She doesn't know what she's anxious about. She's just anxious about everything. Hi, Shelley. Thank you so much, darling, for the flower. So glad to have all of you with me on the air today. This is so much fun to, speak with all my friends. All right. So, so when we're talking about anxiety, I want you to realize that the anxiety is often generalized and unfocused. Sometimes you just feel anxious. You can't really tell what you're anxious about, not immediately, like you could saying, I am afraid of. All right. But anxiety causes you to worry, miss sleep, and overreact in a lot of cases. By the way, that's a reaction that's not only external, but internal. You see? See, we can take all of these things that I talk about on this radio and we can play them out overtly, or we can do it on the inside of us. And that's why we suffer in silence, you see? Okay. Now, there are different kinds of anxiety. You can have, by the way, what we call existential anxiety. This is when you're concerned with existence and ask questions like, who am I? Where am I going? Why am I? Right? There is a nihilistic anxiety where the person feels that life is meaningless and is trying to work their way through that. You can have anxiety concerning, as you all know, because I've had this too, math exams or any kind of mathematics or tests in general, or anxiety about possibly being ill or not. Every little thing, a worry. Stage fright is an anxiety. There's a social anxiety, which, by the way, varies in degrees and severity. Those suffering from this may not like physical social contact or may avoid interacting with people that they don't know or people they do know altogether, which really limits their lives. I even heard a story about selective mutism. That's a kind of anxiety as well. I really think this is so interesting. A number of years ago, a friend of mine worked at a school, and she had never heard this little girl, and we are talking, young, 5, 6 years old. She'd never heard this child say a word. She'd observed her for 2 years. So the school got very concerned about this. The child was not speaking. So they approached her parents. They suggested a psychologist, blah, 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 blah. The parent says, but she does speak. And they had to actually do a video of her just jabbering away at home because she never spoke at school. That's a selective mutism, and it is anxiety based. Now, anxiety can be a short term state or a long-term trait. That is not Martha being clever. I found that on the internet, that line, and I thought it was absolutely wonderful. In other words, it can be an acute anxiety. Let's say you're anxious about an upcoming event, something that you're a little bit unsure about. But it can also be chronic. And this is when it causes major problems in your life and gets in the way of you creating the life you really want. Okay? Now, anxiety is related to fight and flight responses. Notice, notice I said fight and flight. We in most literature, everybody is referring to the fight or flight response. That absolutely is not true. That's not an accuracy, in my opinion, because I've never seen one without the other. Sometimes it's at the exact same time. They're doing both if someone is in that mode, right? So I want you all to start in your consciousness work realizing that you're not going to have the fight response without the flight response, and vice versa. They go together. It occurs when a person perceives a situation as unavoidable or uncontrollable, but not realistically so. Again, anxiety may come up when there's no real evidence that there's a problem. It just may be an unknown outcome. And guys, we've got to get used to and tolerate uncertainty, because life should be a divine improvisation. So we need to get you safe with this. You see? And there are a lot of reasons that you might feel unsafe right now. Listen, I want to say that if you do experience anxiety, there is a real good reason you do. There's not a real good reason to stay in it and to keep using it. And so what I want to do today is talk about how you are perpetuating this, because it's something that is occurring inside you and you are feeding. Okay? Certainly that's not what happened when you were young. You inherited it from somebody, you came from an unsafe environment, an unpredictable environment, or something that proved to you that anxiety was the course of action. And you're going to see as we talk, anxiety can do things for you, but only in the ego child's mind. It doesn't even exist in the higher mind. Isn't that interesting? There is no anxiety there. I think it changes when you cross that threshold. I have an exercise called the threshold exercise. And if you all are new to me, I'll tell you what that exercise is. You draw a horizontal line across the page, and then you draw a vertical line. Now you can have scads, infinite numbers of vertical lines there. Underneath, which is the ego child's mind state, you might write anxiety under the vertical line, and it changes when it crosses that horizon into the highest self. Your anxiety becomes, possibly, it certainly did for me, the full and certain knowledge that every moment is important and then I am entirely supported by the universe. Now, if that doesn't seem true to you, we need to go on and hear more about anxiety. Because from my perspective, and from the perspective of a lot of people who have made this transition into deeper levels of consciousness, and are on this journey, they will tell you that's true. Now, keep in mind one thing, though. You have 4 bodies: the mental body, the emotional body, the physical body, and the spiritual body, or the energetic body. We most of the time entertain truisms like the one I've just told you in the mental body. Oh, well, that's a nice place, safe place to hold it, isn't it? You don't really have to act on it. You can just think about it. You see? You can just think about it. But consciousness wakes up. Consciousness occurs as a life experience for you when every single body believes it. So consciousness work is about doing that. When you do consciousness work, they need to address your mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual bodies. They align them all. And then you predictably and inevitably change into deeper consciousness. Now, that's not throwing on a light switch, it's a process. That's why we call our process, used to be called the Burgess process when I was a Burgess. Now it's called Infinite Insight, because it's a process of drilling down and now believing all of that with everything you've got. All right, that said. So when we talk about having anxiety related to fight and flight, underneath this anxiety is a cognitive distortion, or several, by the way, because we often lump cognitive distortions together. And may I suggest that you go back and you listen to my radio shows on cognitive distortions. I think I did 2 series on them. They're very similar, but by the second one, I had even more information. Cognitive distortions, it was the 50 Common Cognitive Distortions by Alice Boyes, who's a PhD, and I really liked her article a lot that she wrote for Psychology Today, and it lists a lot of them. For our purposes here, I want to say that this particular cognitive distortion that I observed in a client of mine told the anxiety-ridden person that they didn't have the skills to cope with something upcoming, and that they were insufficiently prepared. In other words, the anxious person underestimated her coping abilities. Okay, that's it. I want to say you should go back again to the differences between fear and anxiety. Fear is short-lived. It is present-focused. It is geared toward a specific threat or perceived threat, and it's focused on facilitating escape from that threat. Anxiety, in point of contrast, is long-acting, future-focused, broadly focused toward a diffuse threat, and it promotes excessive caution while approaching a perceived threat, and therefore it interferes with constructive solutions. Okay. So anxiety can be experienced in long, drawn-out daily symptoms that reduce the quality of our lives. You can be conscious of it. You can just suspect it's there. All right? This has to do with our awareness. All of a sudden, all of my clients are saying, yes, it's anxiety. That's very healthy. We've got to call it what it is, you know? And say, like the old Westerns, this town isn't big enough for both of us. Okay? All right. This is the chronic version that, by the way, we're talking about right now. It can be experienced also in short bursts with sporadic, stressful panic attacks. That can be part of this. All right. When you feel anxious, you can isolate, withdraw, be resistant to growth, change. By the way, the opportunity inherent in growth and change. And you can have a very negative frame of mind. You'll have disturbed sleep. You might have changes in your living habits. You might eat more or eat less. Your weight reacts accordingly. And you may have a lot of restlessness, like even, chronic jiggling of the foot or something to that end that affects you physically. You may feel dread. You may feel jumpy. You may catastrophize. By the way, that's anxiety driven, and expect the worst. You may always lie in wait for signs of danger. You may feel your mind has gone blank from time to time, like my client who yesterday said to me, "What? I have missed all of that. I just blanked out." I've even had clients fall asleep mid-sentence when they were laying something that triggered their anxiety. There are a lot of physiological symptoms as well: neurological, digestive, respiratory, cardiac, muscular, cutaneous. That has to do with the skin, like perspiring too much or having itchy skin. There are urogenital symptoms sometimes. Now, guys, we've all experienced anxiety. It's part of the human condition. But who wants to feel that way? No one. So the typical unaware reaction to anxiety is to try to escape from it, to run away from it, to push it away. Now, will it surprise you to know that by avoiding it, trying to escape from it, it's actually perpetuating it? Shocking, huh? Because you're not supposed to avoid anything that comes around to you. You're supposed to look at it and work through it and resolve it and get on with a wonderful life. In consciousness, we have to embrace all aspects of ourselves, including what we feel and including our feelings of anxiety. You know, I will say that it makes perfect sense. If God is everything, that's my belief system, God is everything, the good, the bad, the light, the dark, everything. And if you are God and the aspect of God known as you, then you are denying yourself the energy of the whole, which comes back to you as the ability to create anything you want. If you deny any aspect of you, it's supposed to be resolved and taken in so you can have all that energy to create the life you want, to manifest well and freely and without issue. You see? Remember what I usually say about emotion. Most people are using it incorrectly. They believe their feelings. And I want to tell you, most of your feelings lie. They just do. Feelings tend to lie. So they believe their feelings and they avoid them and what they're anxious about because they believe their feelings. But what if feelings had a different purpose? And I do believe they do. They are not here to make us feel bad. By the way, this is our response to our feelings that make us feel bad, not the feelings themselves. Feelings are just feelings. I feel sad right now. Okay, well, I can really go with that and have a real big response to that, or I can acknowledge that I feel sad. You see? It's a question of indulging in them or accepting them. I'll accept I feel real sad right now. I'm making that up. I don't feel real sad right now, but I have in my time, as we all have. What feelings are signposts that say, look more deeply, look, investigate this. That's what they're there for. There's something unresolved here. Go look for it. Go see what it is, so you may resolve it. Okay. We make ourselves anxious by our response to things, by the way. And we've got to, on a spiritual level, give ourselves permission to feel anxious. It's not going to kill us. We just think it will. And we need to investigate it. And when we found the source of it, we can resolve the past, and in the present, we'll make very, very wholesome and life-enhancing decisions that take us forward instead of shutting us down. And the interesting thing is, when you experience anxiety, there is some sort of loop that you're looping back into it. I'm going to give you some examples of that. And you never go anywhere. You just loop around again and again in anxiety. Call it what it will. And by the way, anxiety propels you to feel in control and have very powerful feelings, but then they're going to take you right back into anxiety again. I'm about to give you an example of that. I did an exercise with my class recently. I asked them questions about all major stressors. Here were the questions that I asked. I think I've written them down on this pad somewhere. Yes. I think I said this last week, but I want you to realize these things in relationship to anxiety. I said, I want you to choose a plan of action. So I'm going to give you some hypothetical problems that we're all, these are based on the major stressors of our lives. And I want you to write down a plan of action in an order of what you will do if this ever happens to you, if it ever does, hypothetically. All right. So your partner dies. What are you going to do? What's your plan of action? I'm going to call, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. It has to be in detail now, by the way. A friend drops you, somebody else doesn't understand you and will not listen to an explanation, shuts you out. Someone really important to you is disappointed in you and something you do. What are you going to do? What's your plan of action? You have a car accident, plan of action. You get a divorce, plan of action. You get fired, plan of action. Someone cuts you off in traffic, plan of action. You fight with your partner, plan of action. Okay. Now, the point of this exercise is exactly what they got out of it. Because when I said, all right, what did you learn from this exercise? They all said, they learned that they really know what to do. They said it was amazing. They know what to do in these situations. They know exactly what to do. They just thought they didn't. So what is operative there? That they didn't want to deal with these things. That's what was operative. They didn't want to deal with these things. But not dealing with them doesn't make them not happen. Do you understand that? And life, just life, happens to all of us. It just does. You've got to prove to yourself that you actually know what to do. These things are part of life. And since you can't change things like this, what you can is change your responses to them. And one of the first ways to do that is to have a plan of action that decreases your anxiety. I urge you to do this exercise for yourself. I really do. Prove to yourself that you know what to do. And then, now let's talk about not wanting to do things, all right? Not wanting to do difficult things, particularly things with no known outcome, is a hallmark, by the way, of the egoic child's mind. Not wanting to do something that you need to do. We call it avoidance. It's the mark of an emotionally mature person to do it anyway, to realize there's no time like now, and to do it. That's emotional maturity at its best. Running away from it, saying, I'll think about it tomorrow, like Scarlett O'Hara in Gone with the Wind, is the egoic child's mind, kids. Deal with it. We need to deal with it. Keep in mind the emotionally mature part of you, this higher self mind, does things because it's the right thing to do, and the most loving thing to do is what I mean by I say it's the right thing to do. And number two, it's in everybody's best interest. And it's interesting because you'll do this from the highest self, even if it's not the most popular decision, because you'll just know in your heart that this is what you should do. All right. A lot of people don't like to acknowledge their anxiety going in a different direction right now because they consider it weak, or that it doesn't make them acceptable in some way. It does make you human. And guys, we've got to make peace with our humanness. It's just the way things are. So once we've acknowledged that we are anxious, what do we do about it? How do you stop feeling it? Well, the last question, how do we stop feeling it, is the wrong approach. You're not going to avoid it. And if you do, it will only be temporary and it will come around again. By the way, this is what OCD does, obsessive compulsiveness. That is an anxiety driven experience in many cases, right? And you do that to quell your anxiety. But what happens? You clean up one day, or you arrange things just so, and the next day you got to do it all over again, and the next day you do it all over again. Well, you never go anywhere. You never find anything new and have a great adventure and confront the anxiety that's underneath it all. And that's the only way that you get through it. I got real tickled with some of my clients who have anxiety. I said, well, let's do something. What really upsets you? And they say, oh, I can't stand it when my kids leave clothes on the floor, for example. And I said, great. I think you need to take some dirty clothes and put them right there on the floor. And I want you to report every hour, every day, every few hours, whatever you do, all your feelings until you're resolved that they can be on the floor and it's fine and they'll get washed eventually, and then you may go and wash them. And they had a great deal to report to me about that experience, because it is not in giving in to these anxiety driven urges, it's discovering what's under there. Several of my clients are very interesting and find themselves very interesting, by the way, in their avoidance of anxiety. They have anxiety, they're willing to say. Hi, Morad. So glad that you're listening today. They are really angry when someone calls them on their anxiety or sets it off. They rage and storm, and it makes them feel very in control, but only temporarily. See, anxiety tells you you're not in control. So if you rage and storm and you are convinced that you have the only right way to do it, it is anxiety driven. Because they've upset themselves, right? Because something is not the way they can control it, then they try to exert control over it because they, of course, are not really in control. And then they revert to feeling anxious and the cycle starts all over again. I'll give you a real good example of this. I had a client who came up with this, and I thought this was brilliant. Because they feel so anxious, they exert control in order to feel more powerful, in order not to feel anxious. But here's the rub. Every time they use this system, it makes them feel more anxious. This is what we call entrenchments. And you entrench, you use it and use it and use it, and you get really entrenched in this. And you convince yourself you have to use it again every time. And you're not going anywhere. That's the loop. So because you feel anxious, you exert control in order to feel more powerful, in order not to feel so anxious. And every time you use this system, it makes you feel more anxious because you're just going around and around and around in a loop instead of facing your anxiety. Understand? Good. You see, every single thing in your being is calling you to live according to your authentic nature. And your authentic nature is free. It's creative. It's discovering all the time. It's doing different things. And hence, you live your authentic nature. You have a life that's lived authentically, full of different stuff, information coming in, choices that are dynamic. and fun to make, and some fun to say no to. This means you've got to confront your anxiety and not try to bury it and do the same thing over and over again. You are managing your anxieties, we all are, in the egoic way until we learn to handle them in a more dynamic way. So how do we do that? Well, for one thing, and I'm going to give you a list here. So here's number one. You've got to stop making good things bad and bad things good. That's what we all do. Crazy, huh? Now, I want you to understand that while we all do this, trying to find the meat of it in what you're specifically doing. And by the way, I can't do on a radio show. This comes out in sessions when I am working with someone privately, but I'm putting this on the table so you can think about what you're doing. For example, let's say you're waiting. I'm just going to give you a generalized example. Let's say you wait for the right time to do something. You wait to lose weight so you can look your best. You wait for a partner to come along before you can take that trip because you tell yourself you really want to share a dynamic trip like that with someone. They all seem like pretty valid reasons, huh? And they're there to convince you that you have a good valid reason, but you are still stopping your life. You're not doing anything. You're making excuses for non-movement, and this is going to bring you unhappiness ultimately. So while you tell yourself that waiting is a good thing, I'm going to tell you it's not for your overall life. This is what you've done. You've made a bad thing good in your psychology. You understand? A good thing, bad example, is telling yourself that if you wait long enough, work hard enough, hang in there long enough, you'll be rewarded. The truth is, you might just be afraid to move, to take chances, to stretch, to grow. And these things, honestly, are where your opportunities are always going to be. Out of the box, out of what you currently have created in terms of your boundaries. You can't just keep going to and from your mailbox every day and expect something to happen. You've got to move past it, you see? Always stretching your boundaries to discover how safe and supportive life really is for you. You know, I have a different perspective on things because I was an actor when I was younger. And when I came along, it was really interesting because you just didn't tend to say no to things. Hang on just a second, kids. In other words, when you auditioned for a show and they said, or your agent called and they said, can you tap dance? You said, generally, sure. And then you went out and you learned how to tap dance. Can you play the cello? Sure. You learn real fast to play the cello. Can you sing? Sure. And you learn real fast to sing, and then you go in and you try. Can you play the piano? Sure. You learn the things. You were always challenged to learn things. That was just part of that life back then. Now, what I want to say to you is it did constantly require you to stretch your boundaries. And I'm very grateful for that time in my life because it did require me to stretch beyond what I thought my limits were. And I'm going to suggest that to you. If you've been waiting to take that course, if you've been waiting to learn something new, go do it now. And again, I think one of the most incredible spiritual principles is there's no time like the present. Do it now. Don't wait. Don't wait for anything. Okay. So that said, here are some other ways to confront anxiety. Let's talk about those. Number 2, we've got to learn better ways to do things. We're masters at deceiving ourselves. We'll say we're doing something new when it's the same old thing in a different guise, and we are telling ourselves that we're acting for new reasons. We're doing something new when we're really acting for the old reasons, doing something new. That's not good. We've got to confront our motivations. We must learn not to throw ourselves into non-optimal situations. You might need a coach to help you with this, just like I talked to Tina about this. You see, Tina's drawn to, and darling, if you're still listening, I hope you don't mind me using you as an example of this, but you're drawn to people like you that are equally unfocused and will just say, oh, that's just lovely. The fact is, you need a kick-ass coach that's going to tell you, well, that's not going to wash. You haven't thought that through. Let's think that through together. And because that's not in your sensibilities, you might think, well, I don't want to work with somebody like that. And that's the very kind of person that you need to work with to organize this, to make this a viable nonprofit. Part of growing up is to know how to make great decisions for ourselves, and also how to hire people if a great decision is not in our sensibilities, how to get advice from somebody whose sensibilities they are. If we keep throwing ourselves into bad situations and not having enough information and not confronting what we don't know, and this can be applicable to lousy jobs, to unfortunate relationships. Of course, we're going to feel anxiety, and we're going to feel it over and over again because we're making ourselves anxious by bad decisions, by not having enough information, by not confronting our motivations and how we do things. Number 3. To get rid of your anxiety, you have to learn how you are self-attacking. Now, one of the most insidious ways we self-attack is through the word should. We have a lot of shoulds, don't we, in our lives? And the shoulds always mask a self-attack. And guys, if you're attacking yourself all day long, you don't think you'd feel anxious? I think it's a normal human response. So we've got to stop the self-attack, and we've got to realize what we're doing. So here's some examples of things that you haven't thought of that you do. All right. If you say, I should go to the gym, what's the self-attack under that? Might be something to the effect of, because I'm fat and unattractive and I've got to do something about it, but I don't want to. Isn't there a sense of futility to that? There's going to be futility in every self-attack. I should go and do the laundry. What's the self-attack? I'm a lazy slob if I rest. I should never rest. Resting is a waste of time and energy. And I'm lazy. All the bad things my mother ever said about me. If I rest. Let's do another one. I should eat right. What's the self-attack under there? I am so undisciplined. I can never do anything. Do you hear the all or nothing quality in that? Are you so undisciplined with everything, or have you had no sleep and you just want to eat some sugar right now? For God's sake, guys, we've got to stop attacking ourselves in these subtle ways, because they're subtle, because they are the most dangerous attacks of all, the ones you're doing to yourself. And you hide them so you can keep doing it. Let's bring it to consciousness now and realize there's a real good reason you're anxious. If you're doing this every day, several times a day, I'd be anxious too. And you must say, if I use a should, what am I really saying underneath this? That is a self-attack on my good character, on my body, on my fine brain. Come on, kids. All right. Number 4. One of the things I want you to do to, um, as a way to confront your anxiety is to see what you really believe. And one of the things that's, oh, I see, I've got another caller. I'll get to you in just a moment. One of the ways that we confront this is to look at those lovely and not so lovely little phrases that your family said to themselves and to you in your childhood. For example, I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't. For example, I take one step forward and two steps back. For example, life is great if you stay strong. For example, life is one damn thing after another and then you die. Another one, life is a struggle. Another one, with ownership comes responsibility. That last one was mine. My father used to say that all the time. They would give me a lovely present. With ownership comes responsibility. Do you know that I still have a box of dolls in the top of my closet? I forget about it unless I'm doing a lecture like this, that I've never played with. Now, it took me growing up and opening my mind to realize something. The creative process is a constant process of breaking it and rebuilding it. Breaking something and rebuilding, breaking something and rebuilding. I'm a writer. I write and then I break it down to see if it's any good and I'll rewrite it. That's what we do. The creative process is destroying and creating and destroying and creating. Okay, so where does with ownership comes responsibility fit in? It doesn't. We're responsible because it's the right thing to do and we want to do that ultimately, but not at the expense of not discovering stuff, right? All right, let's go to our caller and then we'll finish this because we have several other things to say about this. Hang on just a minute. Let's just see. Whoops. Yeah. I'm talking to an 804 exchange. To whom am I speaking?
Oh, hi. Good morning, Martha. I was just listening, but I love what you're saying. I'm actually a global visionary, and everybody can make choices at any point in their life to shift into a higher consciousness and drop the fear by getting the right kind of heart to God alignment. It's not about religion, but it's truly about spirituality. And when you have the right kind of heart to God alignment, anything is possible. I'd like to share my name as I can. There's a lot of things that have been put onto the internet that I think would be interesting to you and your audience. I'd love to speak with you when it's convenient about ways to help people empower themselves and tamp down the chaos globally and bring more spirituality and unconditional agape love into the world.
Well, this is exactly what we're talking about doing in all the aspects when we're talking about this show. So I'm so glad that you did call and thank you for sharing that. You can reach me, and as a matter of fact, everybody can reach me through my website. I will get these emails from you, and then I can certainly return the call. And my website is Martha Novak, NOVAK.com. So just write me through that, and I would love to hear what you have to say and what you're involved in. What is your first name?
My first name is Hugh, H-G-H.
Wonderful, Hugh. Well, I'll look forward to hearing from you, okay? Hugh? I don't know why there's a delay on this phone sometime.
Yes, I'm still here.
Yes, good. I'm glad, darling. I worry about this phone because sometimes there is a delay on it and I don't know whether people are still there or not. So, Hugh, I'm so glad that you called in and shared this because this is exactly what we're talking about.
Well, that's when the positivity comes through, the negativity interferes.
Well, a lot of times it does until it doesn't. So
When
that's
the
true.
positivity comes through, the negativity likes to interfere.
Yes, it certainly does. I'm so glad that you called in. Thank you for sharing all this.
Just a couple of simple.
Hugh, you keep cutting
Well,
out.
thank you for taking my call, and I wanted to bring people to. All right, I'll continue listening, and thank you.
Bless your heart. I'll look forward to hearing from you. Bye-bye. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so sorry. Sometimes, you're hearing the phone go in and out, and I never know if you're still there or not. So do know that if I ask you to repeat yourself a million times, or if I say, "Are you there? Are you there? Are you there?" That's why. All right, let's go to number 5. Again, we're talking about confronting your anxiety and what you might be doing to perpetuate it. I think that we all must be very aware of what we're doing. Anxiety masquerades as a lot of things. It can masquerade as sadness. It can masquerade as resistance and defiance. It can manifest as aggravation or rage or the exertion of control. Um, and then keep in mind, anxiety is often where it starts. Actually, that is not the base, but it is almost the base. It is then it manifests in more sophisticated paths. Living a conscious life is to go somewhere, not going somewhere in the classic sense of getting ahead, although that's probably, you know, living your potential, using your talents and gifts and abilities and wisdom as contribution. Yeah, now we're talking about your highest self. And number 6, look at what you really believe. Are you the victim of a random universe? See yourself sliding down into a deep and peaceful place. You can use an image for this if you'd like. I always see a slide, and I'm sliding down. It's got a lot of wonderful curly cues. I can slow it down, I can speed it up. But I know I'm not at the bottom until my feet touch a dirt floor. So you may say that you're at the, and here you're surrounded by your favorite things and your favorite colors. We're asking you to slide down into that peaceful spot where everything is all right, past your worries, past everything. Here in this very peaceful place are your favorite colors, your favorite things. You may be surrounded by nature. Settle yourself, no matter where you are, into a big, comfortable chair in your mind. Something enormously comfortable that you can really settle down in. Now, take a few seconds of quiet there. And as you're sitting there, I am here to tell you that life is in supporting you just like this chair. That your egoic child's mind just gets in the way from time to time. You are in the process of learning that you are safe. You are secure. You are surrounded by love because that's all you are. You are love in high and low degrees, but you are love. There is not one moment that has ever been wasted in your life, not one. It is all significant. It is all perfect. It is all wonderful. And every moment has been taking you to a full, happy, participatory, and abundant life. All you have to do is cooperate with it. You're in the process of learning how you resist. That's all. Every moment has its purpose. Every moment has had its purpose. Every moment will have its purpose. You have your purpose. And your purpose is in these minutes that are passing and what you're learning. Some of them have been working against you. Some of them have been working for you. Some of them have been in full cooperation. You're learning now to cooperate more fully. Let each moment teach you, don't look away. Let your anxiety teach you. Let it take you someplace where the resolve is. You're safe. There's nothing that can hurt you or kill you in information and knowledge and truth and cooperation. And it is that cooperation that is going to take you somewhere else, where you will prove to yourself it really has all been perfect. This kind of information will set you free. And this is the peace you've been seeking. You're proving to yourself that life is good, that you are good, that it's all a perfect system, and that you are free to choose what you want as you go through it. And these old issues are dropping away. Every moment matters. No moment has been wasted. And they all lead to the glorious place of your potential. And this is you in your authenticity and truth. Look right at it. Every single thing in your life, all the moments you've so misjudged, all of them have had a purpose. Everything has a purpose. Now sit with that for a minute. And ask yourself where your anxiety is now. Sweeties, there isn't any. But you've let old ideas about life and misperceptions and ideas that you don't even know you have down there in your ego child's mind get in the way. You may open your eyes now and come back to the present. What if your whole life is purposeful? What if everything has been perfect? What if you're just on your journey and you have been trying to control it all? You don't need to. You're safe. You're already safe. Now look at stuff. Cooperate with it. Let's go on this marvelous journey together. You keep in mind, I am never saying to you that your anxiety hasn't been warranted. I'm saying it's there for a reason. I am saying let's not stay there. But the not staying there has to do with your accepting it and resolving it and looking at it, not in your pushing it away and trying to play games with yourself because it's there. Let's resolve it once and for all. I go back to the image that I had before. I was talking to a man years ago who just didn't get consciousness work. And finally, I got a little annoyed with him, and I reached for his hand, which was kind of shocking back then because I didn't know this man very well. And I said, you're constantly, I don't know what this is about, but you're constantly being cut. You're cutting yourself over and over again, and you're slapping a Band-Aid on it. The Band-Aid, by the way, are all your devices that you're using to cope that come from the ego child's mind. I am interested not in the Band-Aid or putting one on the wound. I'm interested in seeing why you continue to cut yourself so you can ultimately heal. Guys, I've had a wonderful time with you today. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back. I will. Is it next week? I will not be back next week with a show. I will be here the following week. I'll be here the following week, and we'll look forward to talking with you at that time. I will post this on my website. Guys, please look at Martha Novak, NOVAK.com. I'd love to hear from you, and that's how to reach me. Okay? All right, let's do a quick prayer to put all of this in its place, and we'll go on. Dear God, who is all there is, you who are all we are, and all everything is in this world, we thank you so much, and we open ourselves to the healing that is intrinsic to the truths that we put on the table here. We ask that we accept them and allow them and receive them now, and allow our lives to change. Change is the growth and goodness of God. We thank you so much for all of this as we open ourselves now to more, for God is an infinite and ever expanding set of truths always in motion. We go with this. We open ourselves now past our anxiety, realizing that anxiety is just a very old evolutionary tool we've used to make ourselves stop, slow down, or give up. We don't need to do that. We can investigate why we have it and help ourselves get rid of this in all sorts of ways. We now bring that into our lives, the growth, the change, and the opportunity. Bring up great courage in all of us that we may live the dynamic lives that we were born to live in our potential. We thank you for all of this, dear God, and say this prayer now in your name, in the name of the Ascended Masters, our love-centered guides and friends, and in the name of each and every person listening to the show today, or at any time they listen to the show, and so it is. Amen. Ladies and gentlemen, I do want to mention to you that all of our shows are archived. They are archived on Blog Talk Radio. They are archived on Facebook Live. Sorry about the 2 times the Facebook Live went down today, but it came up. And they're all going right to YouTube. You can do us a real big favor if you will get our shows around and tell people about these shows. They're most Sunday mornings, unless I'm entertaining guests or going somewhere on a tour. You can absolutely hear them every Sunday morning at 10 o'clock on Facebook Live and Blog Talk Radio. And you can access these shows under radio shows on my website, marthanovak.com. All right, kids, have a wonderful week. Please like us and share us and follow us and do all those things that we do on social media. We would appreciate it very much indeed. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. Bye.